To work and create for nothing, to sculpture in clay, to know that one's creation has no future, to see one's work destroyed in a day while being aware that fundamentally this has no more importance than building for centuries, this is the difficult wisdom that absurd thought sanctions. Performing these two tasks simultaneously, negating on the one hand and magnifying on the other, is the way open to the absurd creator. He must give the void its colors. But if those failures all have the same resonance, the creator has managed to repeat the image of his own condition to make the air echo with the sterile secret he possesses. So over my years of doing street photography, there's one thing that I've noticed, and it's that street photography is very much an inherently absurdist practice. If you've read anything on absurdism, if you've read anything from Camus, Myth of Sisyphus in particular, it is very much hand in hand with a lot of the ideas and core principles of street photography, and that's something that I want to get into a little bit in this video. In my opinion, street photography is very much an attempt at reconciling with the meaningless and reconciling with just the events that occur in day-to-day life that make no sense whatsoever. For me, a lot of the peace that I get from participating in the act of street photography is just from giving up any attempt to reconcile any of that and just accepting the fact that these are just events that happen and that they are moments that I can be a part of. And so I thought today we can go around, we can do some street photography, and we can look more into this idea of absurdism and how it can relate to this thing that we do. All right, I'm getting this. Fucking bummer, dude. That sucked. Yeah, I missed that. One of the core ideas behind accepting absurdism is accepting failure, and I feel like that is inherently a big part of street photography. I feel like for me, it's very much an experience of just repeatedly, over and over, time and time again, f***ing up so horribly and being okay with it, because at the end of the day, what is any of this? You know, you miss a photo, it's not gonna alter like anything in the grand scheme of things. I think an important caveat for a lot of this too is the idea of not conflating absurdism with nihilism in terms of, yes, I've screwed up thousands of photos, if not more than that, and not letting it just be this like endless despair, just letting it be this thing that you accept and that you move on from, and this idea that, you know, you find joy in the meaninglessness of everything. One of the core ideas at the very end of the Myth of Sisyphus is revolving around the actual myth of Sisyphus. And in that, it talks about when Sisyphus is condemned to this eternity of rolling the ball up and down the hill and condemned to failure, it is less about the actual process of getting it to the top of this endless hill, and it's more about what he thinks about when he goes to collect the ball at the bottom of the hill. That is the like core principle for anything I do when it comes to street photography, because anytime I ruin a photo, anytime I go and I try and I fail, it is less about the fact that I actually failed, and it's more about being out in the street, experiencing life, and being okay with this idea that none of this means anything. And I don't even mean that in a bad way. I just mean that life has so much energy, it has so much beauty, and maybe at the end of the day, that is the meaning. But it will always escape you, just like the photo, just like the ball, the boulder rolling down the hill. There is no sun without shadow, and it is essential to know the night. The absurd man says yes, and his effort will henceforth be unceasing. If there is a personal fate, there is no higher destiny, or at least there is one but which he concludes is inevitable and despicable. For the rest, he knows himself to be the master of his days, and at that subtle moment when the man glances backwards over his life, Sisyphus returning towards his rock, In the slight pivoting, he contemplates that series of unrelated actions which becomes his fate, created by him, combined under his memory's eye and soon sealed by his death. One always finds one's burden again, and the struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart, and one must imagine Sisyphus happy. When I talk about like meaning in anything, it's just like, hey man, there's a squirrel over there and his tail's glowing in the sunlight, and like that's fucking fun, you know? I feel like there are so many like cool photos that can be taken, but like a lot of like this idea of absurd or whatever is like, it can even be absurd in the way that like, sure, you are like expected to take cool photos or whatever, but like what actually like gets you going is like a stick, you know? I forget who said it. It might have even been Camus that said, you know, the meaning to life is just the shit that makes you not kill yourself. And I think that's kind of beautiful, honestly. I don't know why, but I like this. Okay. You know what? This is what I'm talking about. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Thank you, concrete post. You know what? Hi, it's me. Another big thing for me about street photography is that it is, in a lot of ways, just living vicariously through everybody that you see. And one of the ideas that Camus talks about in here is this idea of the purpose of life, if there is one, just living as much life as possible. And he gives the example of actors and actresses being some of the most absurd people in the way that they take on many lifetimes within their life because they get to represent all of these different people, all of these different paths. And I feel like that is also very much represented in street photography because you go out and you observe all these people, you get to experience their life for even just a brief moment, and you get to see the beauty in other people in other almost like dimensions, as like hippy dippy bullshit that sounds. Beyond that, even if you are not connecting with anybody and you're merely just observing things happening, I feel like it is also just a practice in reconciling the absolute chaos that is modern life. One of my favorite parts in the entire book, Myth of Sisyphus, is when Camus says that the absurd depends as much on man as on the whole world. For the moment is all that links them together. It binds them one to the other, as only hatred can weld 2 creatures together. This is all I can discern clearly in this measureless universe where my adventures take place. For me, that is the core of everything that I really believe in when it comes to street photography. I've given up any hopes of trying to insert myself into moments, trying to see things that I like. For me, it's more so just a practice in observing and accepting the world for what it is and for the moments that whatever this life I have is giving me. One of the things that I also feel like very much encompasses a lot of street photography is when he says that, for on one hand, the absurd teaches that all experiences are unimportant, and that on the other, it urges towards the greatest quantity of experiences. 2 men living in the same number of years, the world provides them the same sum of experiences, but it is up to us to be conscious of them. Being aware of one's life, one's revolt, one's freedom, and to the maximum is living, and living to the maximum. I I can negate everything of that part of me that lives on vague nostalgias, except for this desire for unity, this longing to solve, this need for clarity and cohesion. I can refute everything in this world surrounding me that offends me or enraptures me, except this chaos, the sovereign chance and this divine equivalence which springs from anarchy. I don't know whether this world has a meaning that transcends it, but I know that I do not know the meaning and that it is impossible for me to just now know it. What can a meaning outside my condition mean to me? I can understand only in human terms. What I touch, what resists me, that is what I understand. And these two certainties, my appetite for the absolute and for unity and the impossibility of reducing this world to a rational and reasonable principle, I also know that I cannot reconcile them. What other truth can I admit without lying, without bringing into hope I lack, and which means nothing within the limits of my condition? Understanding the world for a man is reducing it to the human and stamping it with his seal. Yet it is the absurd contradiction itself, that individual who wants to achieve everything and live everything, that useless attempt and that ineffectual persistence. The absurd artwork illustrates thought's renouncing of its prestige and its resignation to being no more than the intelligence that works up appearances and covers with images what has no reason. If the world were clear, art would not exist. Expression begins where thought ends.
Stick around. Take it in. Your glory.
This is like the most apt outcome for this video, is that just like all the photos suck and it's just me talking. Because the amount of times there have been photo walks where I walk for like 8 hours and I go home and there's nothing is incredible. But also at the end of the day, I don't really think about the photos. Like, I love getting good photos. It's why I'm here right now. But also, like, I don't know. I'm also here right now so I can walk. It's a beautiful day. Gotta take in the sun before it goes away and I succumb to a winter-long grayness. But I don't know, man. Life, photography, it's just about like being out there and having a good time, being with friends, seeing things, and just living, you know? So, I hope this was helpful. If it wasn't, this video is meaningless anyways. Have a good day.